Jung's Christianity was of a particular variety. Um, his, his father, his grandfather, uncles, ancestors were Swiss Protestants. That's a particular kind of Protestantism, even very special. Has its own particular manners and customs and beliefs. But of course, Jung's understanding of Christianity and his study of Christianity far exceeded his background upbringing. But I want to mention a number of significant texts in which Jung speaks about Christianity, which he comments on Christianity, and then I want to walk us through a few of those, not in great detail, we don't have a lot of time, but just to get a sense of how he approached Christianity, how he was very much formed and shaped by his Christian heritage, and the points of criticism that he had regarding Christianity. He was critical. I think of Jung as being in a lifelong family argument with Christianity. Not that he was arguing with his father, who was a representative of Swiss Protestant Christianity, or his grandfather, Samuel Preisberg, but with his culture and with the tradition that he grew up in and inherited. When, toward the end of his life, a publisher came to him and said, "We would like to publish some of your letters. What do you suggest?" He immediately responded. He said, "Die Pfarrerbriefen." Pfarrer are ministers. These are letters that he wrote to clergymen, exchanges that he had with religious figures. Pfarrer, die Pfarrerbriefen. Because he put a lot of time and energy into those letters. And he wrote letters to ministers and to religiously educated and interested people all his life, from the time he was a young psychiatrist until the end of his life. So if you want to know about Jung's relationship to Christianity and some of his ideas about Christianity, read his letters. There are collected 2 volumes of his letters collected to various people, and in those you will find many letters to ministers and clergymen. There's a published exchange of letters that he had with the Roman Catholic priest Victor White. From about 1938 on, Jung wrote quite a lot about Christianity. And the reason for that is a dream that he had on his trip to India, which I will recount in a moment, which pointed him in the direction of his own culture and his own tradition, taking him away from some of the interests that he had had in Eastern religions previous to that, focusing him much more on his own culture and his own background tradition. And so out of that dream and following that dream, he wrote several important texts for our subject today, his relationship to Christianity. And one of them, the first major one, was in 1940, his reflection on the dogma or the doctrine of the Trinity in Christian theology. That was followed a year later by a very extensive reflection and commentary, interpretation of transformation symbolism in the Mass, in the Roman Catholic Mass. And in these 2 texts, you see Jung reaching beyond his own Protestant tradition. The doctrine of the Trinity isn't so essentially important in Protestantism as it is in Catholicism. And certainly the Mass is not something that's practiced at all in Protestantism. The communion service is a very different matter in Protestantism from what the Mass is in Catholicism. So he's reaching more deeply into the Christian tradition and interpreting and trying to understand the psychological dynamics and processes that are revealed in the doctrine and in the ritual of the Mass. And then a few years later, in 1949, he publishes the book Ion, which is an interpretation of Christian history the last 2,000 years, using astrology, the age of Pisces, age of conflict between the two fishes, the first millennium being an age of construction, the second millennium being an age of deconstruction, and landing us into the present dilemma that we have, spiritually speaking, in the Christian West today. So the idea is to bring about a state of self-integration that is more complete than what can be found in Christianity. That's the next step in the evolution of Christianity, of its individuation, to include what has been left out. That's what I write about in my book on Jung's treatment of Christianity, that Jung puts Christianity in a sense on the couch and analyzes its one-sidedness, its achievements and accomplishments with great respect, but also advocates that it continue the process of working out the problem of evil, which is a severe problem, left undone, unaccomplished, and the problem of what to do with the feminine, the flesh, how to make an experience of the divine something more complete than one finds in a strictly spiritual level within the Christian tradition. So you could say that Jungians have been doing a lot of work on this in the last 50 years since Jung's death. I think a lot of books have been written about it. I think advances have been made to some extent, and in individuals' lives who have taken seriously the claims of the unconscious, looked carefully at their dreams, worked with them, and continue to bring this into connection with the Christian tradition, so that there are movements within the church, you could say within the expanded church, not any particular denominations, but to try to take dreams seriously, to try to look at the unconscious, to try to bring in an awareness of shadow, to create an ethics that takes shadow awareness into account, that isn't just splitting and projecting the negative onto others. And so to advance the consciousness of wholeness in the Christian tradition.